Ubisoft. EA.
No, I've given you everything.
Rockstar.
Oh, yee ass haircut you got.
Bethesda.
Yes, I was in the chess club.
For years, these companies dominated the gaming scene, oppressing customers with game-breaking bugs, exorbitant microtransactions, and never released sequels.
Grand Theft Auto 6 PS4!
And while gamers suffered, these companies, growing fat and decadent off their profits, prospered like never before. However, an even bigger company in the form of Amazon was watching and waiting, ready to pull off the greatest heist the world had ever seen. Gentlemen, we're gonna make games. And so our story begins like all good heists do, casing the target. In this instance, it's the gaming industry, harboring billions of dollars in revenue, a massive amount of money that, to a billion-dollar corporation, would actually seem like a normal day at the office.
You don't scare me!
But that's beside the point, because Bezos and his gang had already pulled off a string of escapades across the world of trade, and were hungry for even more money.
I'm ravenous. I haven't eaten in weeks.
They busted open the book bank, they cornered cloud computing,
Give me your money, bitch!
and,
Your Christmas bonus.
like every great company, massively underpaid their workers.
Fruitcake?
No need to thank me.
To add to this list of accomplishments, Amazon had actually launched an online app store which boasted the extremely original name of the Amazon App Store,
Wow, thank you, Captain Obvious.
giving them even more of an incentive to develop their own games in-house, rather than relying on a bunch of Taiwanese sweatshop coders to do the job for them. Before concrete strategy was even devised by the higher-ups, Amazon was off and running on their great gaming adventure, releasing their first game, Living Classics, in 2012. Judging by the trailer's view count, ratio, comments, and the release platform,
Hell no, man. What the fuck?
it didn't do that well.
I expect nothing. And I'm still let down.
Wait a minute.
And that's when Amazon realized something.
Wait a minute.
Making games took time. Potentially years of effort would have to be poured into developing a AAA blockbuster. What's more, making good games
10 out of 5. And that's just for the graphics alone, okay?
required talent, drive, and dedication. Something a studio with a year's worth of history most likely didn't have.
There's nothing here!
In 2014, Amazon's obsession with gaming became more and more realized.
I need you.
First off, the company acquired Twitch
You're coming home with me.
for the small sum of $1 billion and monopolized yet another market.
How do those Parker brothers sleep at night?
Second, Amazon Game Studios was officially announced, and Bezos and his billions set up together a crew with the tools and talent necessary for his gaming mission. Enter Kim Swift, lead developer of Portal, Clint Hocking, Far Cry 2's head honcho, Tom Leonard, one of the key minds behind Left 4 Dead 2, and a smattering of System Shock developers. To lead these artistic types was Mike Frazzini, studio vice president, who had a grand total of 0 experience developing video games, and was most likely only appointed because he had spent the last 7 years begging Bezos for a game studio.
Fine.
Then, in a massive coup for the company, as well as a small dent in Amazon's coffers,
I'll buff out.
the company acquired Double Helix Games, a studio that is best known for, Battleship, I guess? As expected, they were quickly absorbed into Amazon Games proper, further bolstering the studio's ranks. As Jeff assembled the crew, a master plan for the heist began to take shape.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
It was recognized that the realm of AAA gaming was out of reach. Requiring brand recognition, the studio had yet to command,
Who the fuck is this now?
while slaving away in some twangy indie rubbish was completely out of the question. Luckily, a third option did exist. One that would allow the studio to make games to the mainstream without having to go toe-to-toe with the latest Call of Duty every Christmas.
This like some UFC shit?
For Mike Frazzini, his company's plan was to split the overarching studio into smaller teams ranging between 5 to 30 crack game devs, each tasked with pumping out a game in roughly a year. With a time limit on development now in place and a market niche identified,
There he is, on the monkey bars.
Try to take him alive.
Frazzini would finally narrow down the genre of games he wanted to develop.
Oh my god! Inhuman reaction!
Actually, let me restate that, because he didn't narrow anything down at all. According to him, Amazon Game Studios were looking to produce clones of Minecraft, an open-world survival sandbox game that had spent more than a year in development before hitting alpha. The Walking Dead, an episodic adventure game with no sandbox elements in the slightest, and The Room.
Oh, hi, Mark.
No, the other one. A mobile-based puzzle game with neither sandbox nor episodic elements that was designed to help you avoid your girlfriend when you were both at a party. How Mike saw commonality between any of the aforementioned titles is unknown. Add in some generic corpo speak about creativity and craftsmanship, and the next thing you know, you're ready to make games. But not those kind of games, for even the laziest Minecraft clone required experience to successfully fabricate.
Where's the any key?
And before Amazon could tackle Minecraft clones,
Brexit means Brexit.
they had to embark on a series of lesser heists in gaming's underworld. That's right, they made mobile games. In preparation for the big heist, Amazon Games embarked on a plethora of small-scale crimes.
You're hard, showing off.
Raiding App Store after App Store, brandishing whatever hastily made game they'd just come up with,
Hastily made game.
before making off with as much money as possible before the gaming police could catch them. Over the course of 2 years, the studio and its employees had a grand old time, pumping out titles that are so obscure, neither YouTube nor Wikipedia know of their existence.
What the fuck is this gay shit, bro? I don't fucking know what you're talking about, man.
Naturally, apart from mentions by the illustrious Android police, these games quickly vanished into obscurity, doing little to endear the public to both Amazon Games and the Amazon App Store. And what's more, remember all the talent Bezos had acquired for Vizzini? Well, it'd be best if you forgot, because most of them have already left. Clint Hocking would dip in 2015, having not shipped a single game.
Smoke bomb!
Kim Swift would also leave the studio, having slaved away for years without seeing a release date.
Do you hear me? I have nothing!
And to be honest, who could blame them for doing a runner? According to 2 ex-employees, Vizzini had absolutely no idea what he was doing. And not just in a business sense, but also in a gaming sense, with the duo claiming that Mike's gaming knowledge was so limited, his favourite game of all time was 1987's RBI Baseball. Which, to be fair, was a revolutionary title that did the impossible and made baseball even more boring than it normally is. He was apparently also unable to distinguish between trailer footage and real-life gameplay. Ooh, tough luck, Mike. You get it next time. Oh yeah, by the way, Amazon related denied these claims, so no sue, please. However, the studio still harbored visions of grandeur, of that big score that would see their status in the world of gaming skyrocket.
Respect.
With Amazon's bank account following suit.
To the moon!
And then, 4 years after the release of their first game, an opportunity for the big heist they'd been training for had finally arrived at the September 2016 TwitchCon.
Showtime.
When the studio finally announced the development of not 1, not 2, not 3, oh wait, it was 3. Damn it, I knew I should have studied harder. New games, all of which were intended to be the antithesis to the mobile rubbish Amazon had previously been coming out with. You had Breakaway, a weird mix between Dota and Rocket League, with Twitch features crudely crammed into it. Crucible, which forced League and Overwatch into a loveless marriage born out of convenience. And finally, New World, which took World of Warcraft's mystical land of Azeroth and swapped it out for an even more fantastical place. North America! However, while making a mobile game required little more than a keyboard and an internet connection, the aforementioned trio of titles necessitated a more specialized set of skills. For one, they needed a dedicated game engine.
Oh, nice. Amazon engineering sticker.
Which by itself would take years of development to successfully procure. Luckily, as always, the Amazon war chest was ready and waiting to be cracked open yet again. Enter Crytek, a struggling German company.
I'm only asking for enough to feed me kids.
Best known for Crysis and the CryEngine and Far Cry. One can only presume that an inability to manifest unique prefixes and suffixes was a major contributor to the company's bankruptcy. But despite teetering on the brink of the unemployment line, Crytek had a very valuable ace up its sleeve, namely their game engine, which had spawned hundreds of third-party titles.
Congratulations!
And promised to take prospective game developers to the dizzying heights of success achieved by many games, such as Kingdom Come.
You've been with whores, haven't you?
Prey, and everyone's favourite waiting simulator.
Come on already!
Star Citizen, enthralled by these successes.
I burn, I pine, I perish.
And in desperate need of an engine, Amazon would pay upwards of $70 million for a CryEngine license. Now, most studios would just take this perfectly good software and run with it. But this was Amazon, a company so obsessed with in-house development that its own employees weren't allowed to use Gmail. So instead of just reading the manual and watching a couple of YouTube tutorials during a lunch break, the devs were forced to jerry-rig an engine of their very own.
Yeah, that's one fine-looking game engine. Why doesn't mine look like that?
And so arose Lumberyard from the perfectly fine and healthy ashes of the CryEngine. Only this time, it came with some Amazon flavor that made it a much more unique
I'm not like other game engines. Careful, it's spicy.
and much less user-friendly experience.
Oh.
Not that Lumberyard's developers would even have such experience to begin with,
Oh no, it disappeared.
since Amazon adopted the innovative process of plucking developers working on a game and firing them straight at Lumberyard's development in the hope that something would stick. And keep in mind, while all this engine clownery was going on, Amazon's 3 titles were also being worked on using unfinished versions of the new engine, meaning most devs are forced to plan gameplay features months in advance, twiddle their thumbs while waiting for Lumberyard to catch up,
Don't even think about trying to talk to me.
and then pray that the aforementioned features actually worked, to the point where development was slowed by a whopping 50%. In fact, Lumberyard apparently took so long to process art or compile code
Could you be any slower?
that devs ended up playing video and watching Amazon Prime during the waiting process. If the last part is true, then perhaps Lumberyard being a useless piece of shit was part of Jeff's plan from day one.
The game was rigged from the start.
Okay, so Amazon now have a crew. Or at least they had one. They have experience, albeit not in the right areas, but close enough.
Boy, this is sick, man. You ever played Snake?
And finally, they have an engine. Or at least they will when it decides to play nice with developers. Now, all they need is a game to work on. Enter Breakaway. Having been previously announced at 2016's TwitchCon, the title was scheduled to be the first of the trio to release, and was designed to be a combo of literally everything the marketing team could think of, such as fast action, competition, and, most importantly, a team to play with.
No shit. Yeah. You handle
Fast action gameplay.
However, it seemed that implementing such groundbreaking features took its toll on poor old Breakaway, since while Frazzini had originally promised that his studio would pump out games like there was no tomorrow, development of Breakaway was painfully, agonizingly slow. To the point where, after 2 years of supposed development, the only news gamers received of the upcoming title were a couple of trailers, an Office League that featured Amazon employees being forced to play the game during the lunch break, and a few other matches held in some German guy's basement.
Der war hier auch schon mal. Die Frisur ist immer noch krass.
Unfortunately, these bits of footage, along with the other hundreds of videos nobody watched, are the only evidence that Breakaway was actually a tangible concept and not just a fever dream Frazzini had while pulling an all-nighter of RBI baseball.
I think maybe you should get quite a lot of sleep.
Because in March 2018, the game was unceremoniously taken out the back door and shot. Most in the gaming world didn't even notice.
Must have been the wind.
But for these 15 YouTube commenters, it was a tragedy of Shakespearean proportions. In fact, I'd say the immortal bard has absolutely nothing on the literary juggernaut known as Six Tech. Despite this setback, Amazon's gaming dream wasn't over. Not by a long shot, because not only did they have 2 more titles in the oven, their ranks were also bolstered when Christoph Hartmann, co-founder of 2K Games, joined the party.
You have my sword.
Ready to lend his years of expertise to both Crucible and New World. But while those two titles geared up for a third year in development, no doubt receiving a level of polish typically reserved for your dad's 71 Challenger, Amazon was also secretly working on another title that was so under the radar, this video wasn't aware of its existence. Up until now. Tonight, Clarkson gets fired from the BBC.
Well, apparently they shot him.
Bezos gives him a new show.
No, wait. It is perfect.
And they lend their voices to a shit game.
Steady. And
The Grand Tour Game, a weird mashup of the Amazon Prime show featuring everyone's favourite international incident starters.
Sorry, but just imagine waking up and remembering you're Mexican.
And your average free-to-play mobile game.
shut the fuck up, no one cares.
Was the next title to be rolled out by Amazon. And, unlike Breakaway, the game was actually sold on online stores. Albeit for a year and a half. Because after being absolutely destroyed by the 6 reviewers who were bothered enough to play the game, Amazon decided to throw in the towel and remove it from sale completely in June 2020, officially stating that they wanted to focus effort and resources on other projects. Why this necessitated barring access to all pre-order content,
Sorry, sir. It's time for you to leave.
is unknown.
And so it is.
Maybe they took up too much server space, who knows. Spare a thought, however, for the journalists at DriveChai, who so nobly went against the grain of unjust criticism and awarded Amazon's release a highly sought after 4 stars. Just ignore the fact that the website was founded by Clarkson, Hammond and May.
Sometimes my genius is... it's almost frightening.
So with Breakaway dead and the Grand Tour game axed to ensure maximum effort was put into Crucible's development,
You need to roll out the big potatoes.
one would assume that, by this point in time, the game was jumping at the bit to take on the entire industry.
You want a piece of me?
Well, you'd be wrong.
I'm wrong.
Because the game would spend 4 years in development before being deemed worthy enough to receive a 1.5-minute trailer.
Fine.
Which showcased gameplay that looked completely different from what was originally promised back in 2016. While the original vision of Crucible featured more backstabbing and team switching than Italian history in the World Wars, 2020's Crucible was a whole new beast in its entirety, boasting ragtag groups of totally original hero designs slowly walking toward the camera. Though it had originally started off as a small-scale battle royale, in the vein of literally every other battle royale, the marketing team realized that the genre had become saturated beyond belief.
Yeah, well, it's getting a little crowded in here.
And ordered the devs to pull off a full 180 and transition to the even more saturated hero shooter market.
Get bent.
Keep in mind that all this development occurred in the strangling embrace of the Lumberyard engine, which, despite being built from the ground up to mesh well with Amazon's vision, was somehow not designed for online play. And devs are not only wrestling with an uncooperative engine, they were also forced to contend with Amazon Games itself.
How did this happen?
With developer Stefan Dewhurst taking no prisoners in his interview with the NME, in which he claimed that he was unable to work on side projects in his spare time, lest his physics simulation suddenly morph into the next Minecraft and deny Amazon that tasty profit. It would also appear that Amazon was completely against their employees learning new skills.
Fuck books.
Oh, no.
Books are for pussies.
No.
Go hit the gym.
As Dewhurst would also claim that he was prohibited from learning anything that would benefit his work. While some companies would pay employees to take a university course to improve their craft, it seemed that Amazon saw Dewhurst as perfect just the way he was. Now isn't that nice of them? However, unlike Breakaway, people outside of Amazon's wage slaves would actually get a chance to experience Crucible for themselves. Not as a full-fledged game, mind you, but rather as a beta, which gave the devs a quick and convenient way to hand-wave any criticism that may have manifested. Unfortunately, it turns out it was a tad harder to get non-contractually obligated players to enjoy themselves.
Why is no one having a good time? I specifically requested it.
Guy, that's Crucible. For the love of God, don't play it. Just avoid it like the plague for now.
Bizarrely, it's a team-based game that doesn't encourage teamwork at all.
Put it in closed alpha for like 6 or 9 or 12 months.
And those were just reviewers. Crucible's Metacritic was equally as damning,
You gotta be shitting me!
with players going as far as to move past the boring and unoptimized nature of the game itself to just take the piss out of Amazon as a whole. But the negative reviews weren't even the worst part. Rather, it was a lack of reviews in general, which meant that not only did people not give a shit about Amazon's latest game, but those that did gave a shit in a very negative way. When Crucible launched, its Frankenstein-esque carcass attracted a scant 25,000 players.
It's alive! It's alive!
A count surpassed by these games every single day. Within a fortnight, that 25k had plummeted to 3. For reference, there are idle games out there that command that number. And within a month and a half, Amazon decided to pull the plug on the game altogether and announced that the game needed to be shoved back into the oven, giving Crucible the extremely dubious honor of being unreleased after launch. The 200 players still grinding it out that month were, as expected, completely devastated. Okay, by this point, it's 2020, 6 years after Amazon began casing the gaming joint, and so far, every heist they've since attempted either ended in complete failure or was aborted before launch. However, there was one saving grace, one last roll of the dice. One game, waiting in reserve, eager for its big moment. Amazon had saved the best for last. Get ready for New World.
My body is ready.
While Breaker and Crucible were both designed to be slightly fresh takes on tried and tested formulas, Amazon's third game in its pipeline was solely intended to go toe-to-toe with the big boys in the MMO genre, with one of the few distinctive selling points being a unique classless leveling system based around a learning by doing system. Oh.
You're like Christopher Columbus. You discovered something millions of people knew about before you.
But hey, it doesn't necessarily matter how unique an idea is, rather, it's how you execute it. Oh well, I'm screwed then. And luckily for Amazon, due to the cancellation of both Breakaway and Crucible, New World was able to receive the combined powers of 3 development teams, each skilled in the rare art of bashing their heads against lumberyard in a desperate attempt to create something. Naturally, it was pretty obvious that despite overseeing years of intense development, the higher-ups at Amazon still didn't have a bloody clue when it came to making games. Taking their traditional approach of letting anyone do anything in the company, regardless of experience, a la Mike Frazzini, and pushing such a concept to its absolute extreme.
How about my final form?
Embarking on a process of employee assignment so random that some workers described it as talent Tetris. With the studio grabbing an ex-artist and placing them in charge of systems.
You're hired. Shit.
2 completely unrelated fields.
Stepbrother, I'm lost.
Before chucking a character designer at AI development. 2 more completely unrelated fields. And finally, allowing someone with 0 experience in the gaming industry to write the entire narrative.
Fine.
To further complicate matters, it seems that New World was suffering from a major identity crisis, indecisively switching between design philosophies, combat focuses, and even payment models as if it were a teenage girl looking for formal dress. So while 2016's New World may have been touted as a PvP-focused, free-to-play experience, it would eventually be thrust, naked and afraid, into the world as a PvE-focused game that demanded 40 of your parents' hard-earned dollars.
Mom, can I borrow 20 quid?
The first true New World experience the public would receive came in July 2021, where Amazon once again released the game in a beta state.
Eat shit, you soy boy.
Game.
But unlike Crucible,
Come on in! There's plenty of room.
New World's beta was a super secret, super exclusive closed beta that was available to a scant 200,000 players.
How to get access to the closed New World beta that will be...
Ooh, better get in quick, mate. And even more shockingly, playing the game didn't feel like a complete train wreck.
Shit.
Well, that's if you could play.
What the hell are you doing?
Because in typical Amazon fashion, something, somewhere, had to go horribly wrong. In this case, it turned out that due to the absence of frame rate limiters in its menu screens,
We don't need no stinking
Frame rate limiters.
New World was sending a deadly dose of 9,000 FPS through the veins of your precious graphics card every time you paused the game, which in turn forced a nasty power spike upon certain GPUs manufactured by EVGA, with predictable results. A few more issues arose regarding audio bugs.
It's like this paper sound. It's just running all the time.
Accidental bans.
What? It's not even spelled correctly.
And all this shit. Any minute now. Jeez, how long is this gonna take? Okay. Good book. Bit short though. Only 9 hours? What a rip! Hey, what's up guys? It's your boy, Mindless Gaming, and today we're beating Skyrim again for the 10th time in a row! Oh, thank God, we're finally done. Anyway, those bugs were to be expected for a beta.
It's all part of the plan.
So instead of looking at the negatives, as we've done so often throughout the video, let's have a gander at the positives. Okay, they're here guys. Trust me. So far, New World had gone further than any previous Amazon developed game ever had.
It'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been.
It had been planned for an actual console. It made it all the way to a beta state.
It should have been me, not him!
And, contrary to all expectations, it actually made it out of said beta in one piece. But the final hurdle awaited. Would the game actually sell?
You wanna buy some?
Amazon Games New World.
Now, if you could ignore the fact that I've been dunking on the game for the past 5 minutes... Okay, just like imagine I dunked it. New World was a massive success for Amazon, and not just in a comparative sense, but in the sense that it quickly found itself top of the Steam charts upon release, beating out the Giant of Dota, the Colossus of CS, and the Legend of Apex in its first week.
Know your fucking place, trash!
Before topping out at around 900,000 concurrent players. In fact, the game was so popular that Amazon would soon find themselves suffering from this newfound success, with the game's servers quickly buckling under the pressure of nearly 1 million connecting players.
Are you gonna fix your servers?
While not exactly ideal for a smooth launch, this problem does have a silver lining. Since the game has reached a point where people are falling over each other to play it, you've probably done something right. Now, admittedly, reviews for the game weren't exactly the best.
It's a candy-coated shell of an MMORPG.
Game critics fucking suck!
With both Metacritic and Steam returning respectable, if uninspiring scores. With the majority of criticism revolving around an uninspired PvE-focused endgame,
That still only counts as one!
recycled ideas, and a bare-bones plot. Need I say more? What's more, popularity quickly dropped like a rock, with the MMO hemorrhaging players to the point where, as of late October, it's currently struggling to compete with whatever the hell this is.
Social credit deducted.
But despite a less than happy ending,
Worst ending ever.
New World's initial successes were nonetheless a cause for joy amongst Bezos, Frazzini, and all the executives. The great gaming heist was finally complete. I believe congratulations are in order, Frazzini. Let me just... Oh.
Amazon Games chief Mike Frazzini is leaving the company.
Well, at the very least, still plenty of time to grind out RBI baseball.